We're going live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maya Luria, and today we are doing our Whip It Up Cooking Club. It is a super hot day out in Tucson, and we are working on summer soups today with Chef Donna Nordin. So I want to welcome Donna here. She is going to be preparing some great, cool summertime soups, including a southwestern gazpacho, a white bean gazpacho and corn soup, along with a fruit soup. Correct, Donna?
Right, right.
Yes. So welcome to the show today, Donna, and I'll let you take over.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and it is bloody hot here, so it's just the right time to start doing cold summer soups. So the first one is that I'm going to run through today is a southwestern gazpacho soup that I will show you two presentations for that. This is one that was at the restaurant when we had Cafe Terracotta. So it has a little bit of heat to it, but as they say in the Sahara Desert, when you want to cool off, you should drink hot tea. So maybe you need a little hot spice, and you can spice it up to be hotter than I will have it today, but that gives you something to help you cool off. They say hot beverages in the desert will act like a cooling system for your body. So let's start with the tomatoes. A gazpacho basically is a base of tomatoes and other peppers, bell peppers, and of course, being southwestern, we're going to throw in a poblano chili, slight diced, and then we're going to have a little cayenne in it for a kick. And it has tomatoes, I say tomatoes, but also tomato juice. So that becomes basically the base of our sauce. But the first thing you have to do, and you have to realize I'm going to be doing a different quantity than maybe your recipe that you'll be looking at. And I may do it in a little bit different order just to get it done in the amount of time that we're constrained to. So you want to start with some fresh tomatoes, and this time of the year they're starting to come in, but they're still not the very best yet. But I tend to like to use the Roma tomatoes just because they tend to have a meatier flesh and less liquid and fewer seeds. So that's what I've done. And you need to blanch them. I use a little tomato shark, but you can use what you like to get the core out. And then I put them into boiling water for about 10 seconds and pop them out, let them cool, and then peel them like so. The skin should just pop off. And then to seed them, you cut it crosswise, and over the sink, or I have a trash can here, over the sink or the trash can, just pull out the seeds, poke your fingers into the holes here, and shake out the seeds, and then just roughly, cut them, because these are going in the blender. So I've already done the others, and we're going to go into the blender. This is an antique blender, by the way. This is a vintage 1964 blender. It still works perfectly fine. I'm sure a lot of you have Vitamix and Bullet and all these other things that are quite fancy, but I'm still working on my 1964 vintage. And it has high and low, has a glass bowl, and I just love it. I don't really want to give it up until it gives up. So as far as the onion in this recipe, calls for a white onions, but you can use any onion you like. You can even use a red onion. I'm not that picky about the onion type or color, but I want to give you a really quick lesson in onion cutting. You take the one end off, the pointy end, and you leave the root on and peel it. You cut it in half before you do that, and that helps you to have a better flat surface to mince your onion. And for this, I am keeping out just a tiny bit of certain ingredients because I'm going to make a tower and show you a different presentation than just putting the whole mixture in a bowl. So when you're dicing an onion, and I'm dicing this small part for my presentation, otherwise I'll show you, you don't have to really dice it so tiny, but I'm gonna make cross cuts, horizontal cuts with flying fingers, and then back like so to get a small dice. And I just need a little bit of dice that I'm going to set aside over here to make my tower. But the rest of it, for this recipe, you don't have to really worry about it. But if you were dicing, let me do that, go through that once again just to show you what you would do. If you dice, you do cross cuts the size you want your dice, you have flying fingers, and you give a couple cuts, and then you go back. Okay, so obviously we don't have to be as fussy for that, for this dish. You just throw it into the blender and go ahead and blend that, and use a little bit of tomato juice if you need it to get the puree to really start. If it gets a little jammed up, this isn't too bad, but we'll throw in a little bit. If it's too dry, if your tomatoes are dry, just go ahead and add a little of the juice and blend it up until it's smooth. Okay, and then I went ahead, and in your recipe, you're going to have some salt, cayenne, and a little black pepper if you like. And I put that already in the bowl so that it'll be there. I'm going to go ahead, and this is the base, although it's going to have more of the tomato juice in it in a moment. Okay, and then the rest of the recipe, let's go ahead and add this in as well. And the rest of the ingredients that go into it are some olive oil, balsamic vinegar, mixed with a little bit of garlic. So you can use your garlic press, you use peeled garlic, or if some of you have the garlic in little cubes that are in the freezer, that's just perfectly spiffy because it doesn't take any time or any muscle. And you can use that. And I'll just stir that in also. And then mix everything together. Get rid of some of this that I don't need as I go here. So stir that in, make sure everything's blended together. Rather soupy at this point, you can see. Okay. It has a little bit of sheen because of the olive oil, and that also adds a little bit of taste. So the other ingredients that are going to go into this, but going to be done in chunky form or diced form, will be the red pepper, the red bell pepper, the green bell pepper, and some poblano chili diced. And again, I'm doing a small version of this recipe, so you don't have to be quite as attentive of what the quantities are. So we'll put that in, and then let's see what we can do. This is the cayenne I use. I have quite a bit of faith in Penzi spices. So if you are into spices at all, I'm sure you all know that we have a Penzi's here in town. Now the cucumber, you could use you could use the English cucumber, the regular cucumber. If you do, I like to, I say to peel it, but I like to half peel it, if you can see what I like to do, make it a little bit striped. And I cut it in half and before I dice it. And you just take your tomato shark or a grapefruit spoon, or even some, I guess, a regular teaspoon might give you some grip on getting the seeds out, like so. And then just dice that. I've done some of it already, and we'll do the rest and add that. And like I say, I have done ahead and kept out a few little bits and pieces along the way because I want to show you how to do a different presentation than just in a bowl. Okay, so we just dice that, add it in with the rest of the one I did earlier. And what else goes in here? Oh, the poblano. So the poblano chili, this one is, you're using it raw. Now the poblano chili is, it's dark green. It has broad shoulders, and it's not usually too long, like very long, like the Anaheim, which is a lighter green and a longer, more elongated chili. This one, when it's dried, becomes the ancho. So for those who are not familiar with the southwestern chilies, the chilies have a different name when they're dried than when they're fresh. So I'm just going to take part of this, if you don't need it all today, and just take out the seeds, throw those out, some of the veins, and then give that a little dice, just like you did with. Now, I happen to think that once the chili is charred, when you use them, you char them, blacken them, and peel them. For some reason, I always have a feeling that they seem a little hotter by then, but that's probably not true. It's just my imagination, because chilies have a mind of their own, and when they're on the bush, one might be hot, growing right next to one that's as mild as a bell pepper. So you can never tell how the heat is going to be in your poblano chili, or a lot of other chilies, until you taste them. They just, they don't let you know ahead of time. Maybe when they're charred and you start peeling them, then you get a little heat that comes out, and you can tell at that point. So now I've got all that mixture in, and I need to correct the seasoning. So this is basically the gazpacho. There are other versions of this gazpacho, a Spanish gazpacho. Let me tell you about a Spanish gazpacho. They tend to use bread, the soft part of the bread, to thicken the soup. Or sometimes, instead of thickening the soup, they'll put a big crouton of bread right in the middle when they serve the gazpacho. So we need to taste it for sure. This is how I get my lunch. So, as I said, I added some salt earlier, and it depends on how much salt you are accustomed to. But for me, I need to add a little bit more salt. Okay? So, okay, one more taste here to see if that helped. Good. Okay, the first presentation. First presentation is just to, excuse me for a minute, to grab a ladle. The first presentation is to just spoon it into a bowl, okay? Like so. Uh-oh, I hear somebody that I didn't think would be around. So the first way to serve it is just plain like this. You can do, I've got some croutons that I'm going to use for the white bean gazpacho, but let's just say you wanted to serve it with a couple of, or we want to put in a few sprigs of cilantro. So that's one presentation, all right? That's one presentation. I think I'll keep it back here for the time being. And then I wanted to show you a presentation that we used to do at Terracotta. We used to make a tower, and at the time we used PVC pipe, that you had cut into about, well, probably 3-inch height and about 2.5 inches across. And we would form a tower. I don't have any PVC pipe anymore, but I've got this one little ring, and I thought we would try to, we're going to try to show you how to build a tower. Okay, so let's start with maybe a little bit of onion on the bottom, like so. And then we'll go ahead and put in something added that's not actually in the ingredients. It would be a little bit of avocado, little squares of avocado, like so. I just cut them like so, and then scoop it out with a spoon. And I put it in a bowl so that I can measure and watch what I'm doing with it. So we scoop it out and then press that on top of the onion. And sometimes you need to have what I would call a little pusher. And you might need that when you want to get it out of this thing too. But just use a glass that might fit inside and just kind of press it down like so. Okay, if I get it out of here, I'd be lucky, right? Okay, and then a little bit of the chopped tomato that I kept behind. Okay, and then I kept behind a little bit of the cucumber. I did not measure this beforehand, but it looks like it's almost perfect. And then some cilantro on the top. And I have right here some chopped cilantro. Put on top, like so. And you just press. Now, it's really better if you make these towers ahead of time. I have to admit, it's better to make them ahead of time and chill it so that it tends to stick together a little better. So I'm going to use a large white bowl, and I put a little bit of, and again, there are a couple of variations here. We can just put some tomato juice in the bottom and put that in. Put the tower in. We'll see if we can slip it out onto plate and then push it through like so. Okay, and then if you want to go ahead and use a little bit of the chunky around the outside, that's perfectly permissible. Okay, so, and then of course if you've got a little extra cilantro, you just sprinkle it around. And that's the other presentation that I wanted to show you today. Okay, I hope you can see that. If I tip it a little bit, the soup will move, but you can see, I hope, the layers. Okay, all right, so let's move on to a white bean and corn gazpacho. I need to wash out my blenders. Excuse me for a minute so we can move on. I have only one blender jar. Okay. All right. You can move on to white beans. White beans, I use the white beans from Trader Joe's. You can use whatever brand white beans that you like, but the ones you tend to get because it just so happens that my husband enjoys very often a white bean and tuna salad. And so I always try to keep some white beans in the house. I also like black beans in a salad, but the white beans and tuna is actually an Italian version of, let me just set this somewhere else. And we move on to the white beans. Little Bloody Mary left over there, practically. So if you, these are the white beans that I use. They're cannellini beans, so they're a little bit bigger, but they're kind of like the big northern, white northern. So corn. If it's not season for corn or whatever, you can use some of this Trader Joe's roasted corn. It gives you a little char flavor along with it. But if you're using the fresh corn, this happens to be white corn. I don't care which color, white or yellow. And sometimes I just pick up the corn, never know what color it is till I get it home. But the first thing you want to do is cut your little yellow tomatoes. These are the little yellow pear. If you can get the round ones, that's fine. If they're really big, quarter them. If they're small, just cut them in half. And then we have, and again, I'm doing this in a little bit of a different order than you're probably reading. So when you're doing corn, this is a trick that I learned actually from Martha Stewart years ago, because I was always trying to cut the corn into a bowl in the sink, the way my grandma used to do it. And I thought, oh, it's just always splattering everywhere. So I just happened to watch something which she was doing corn, and she cut one side, kernels on one side, and then you have a flat surface, and you just keep turning it over to the next flat surface, and then continue to cut. Okay, so now you can go back and trim these little edges. And if you are interested, especially if you like vegetarian stocks, you can use this for stock. You can boil your corn cobs and come up with a nice vegetarian stock. Okay, and like I say, I'm doing only part. I've already done one step ahead of time, which means this corn is not going to get as seasoned in this recipe today as it does usually, because you want to take the corn, the tomatoes, the yellow pepper. I'm going to show you how to cut that, which I've already done some of. And you want to put the salt on it and let it sit, stir it and let it sit for a few minutes. So this is a yellow pepper. I thought this one was pretty because it had a little bit of green. But the easy way to cut a bell pepper, any color, take the top off, take the bottom off, and then you cut into it, and you just turn this as you go around with your knife. Okay, and that way you can clean out the veins at the same time that and I'm not going to be using all this because I already did some. So, and then these little pieces, if you don't use them in what you're doing, I can puree that one in. Just chop it and puree it in with everything else. If you are not using it all, we use it in salad, just raw, especially in the summer, this time of the year when we're going to probably be eating lots of salads because it's too hot to turn on the oven. Okay, so that technically, that has been marinating, and part of it has been with the salt for about 20 minutes. It was a little more than that. Here I put it in here, the little bit of sherry. Yeah, I just buy some sherry. You can get it at Trader Joe's or wherever. Any sherry. Don't get a fancy dance sherry that you would serve maybe to Queen Elizabeth, but you want to just use it for cooking, so don't try to spend a lot of money on it. And a little balsamic vinegar and some dried chili flakes. These just happen to be, I'm not sure what chilies, they're small chilies that my husband Don has grown in the past. He grows them, he dries them, and then he grinds them up. So I have some chili flakes always on hand. So because later on in the recipe it tells you to hold out some of the ingredients, like some of the for texture. So we want to have our pureed mixture. It's almost like the red gazpacho, except that it's corn and beans and that type of thing, but we want to have texture. If you want a really smooth cold soup, do a vichyssoise. My husband, he just reminded me when I was doing all this that he was ready for a vichyssoise, because last year when we were stuck at home during all the pandemic and couldn't go, I made an awful lot of vichyssoise, and he loves vichyssoise. So that's another cold soup that you can find an easy recipe to. I just use a recipe from Julia Child. Excuse me, from Julia Child. It's very easy, just potatoes and onions, and you cook them up and you puree them, and then after that you can eat it like that. It's usually, and you can eat it warm, and it's called potage parmentier, or you add a little cream to it and you have a vichyssoise that's delicious. Put little chives on the top. So let's go ahead and start the puree that you need to do for this soup. We've got the marinated, I call it marinated, salted beans, not beans, corn, tomatoes, yellow tomatoes, and the pepper, and the shallot. I threw the little bit of shallot in here. If you don't have any shallot, you can use a little onion. It's not critical. It's just a little more subtle, that's all. But if you find all you have is onion, you don't want to run out to get anything else. So you have that mixture in, and the beans. All right, let's puree that. If you need the liquid, you can use this little bit of sherry to help it do its thing. And so you get it, you're still going to have, excuse me, but you're going to still have a little bit of texture probably from the chili flakes, because they'll have a few seeds that just won't blend up quickly. So again, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of olive oil. All right, simple as can be. Let's have a taste of that. Okay, I think this all is good.
Donna,
right. Yes.
Donna, can you tell me, what did you add into the blender? Which liquid did you add? I heard olive oil was the second one. What was the first liquid?
This little guy. This
and what was that?
Balsamic, the sherry, and the what do you call them? The chili flakes.
Okay, thank you. It was hard to hear over the blender, so yeah. I wanted to make sure everyone heard.
All right, sorry about that. Anyway, so now that can go in, and by the way, all of these need to be chilled before you eat them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be cold soups. But today, they're just kind of a little more room temperature, because I had them out. I had them out when I was doing my mise en place, because that's something I always tell students, to measure out everything just like I did before you get started, and then you don't have to stop and measure along the way. Okay, so then let's put in a few extra beans, just like the other vegetables. A few of the tomatoes and the corn. And if I wanted, I could just throw in some of this little roasted corn. I haven't done that before, so we'll just see what the color looks like. It has a little bit of charred specks in it. Okay, and let's see. Then to garnish that, with that, we want to garnish. With you can also, I think I said in the red gazpacho that you can use some sour cream on top. Creme fraiche, I kind of opt for creme fraiche instead of sour cream most of the time. Now this is just a little bit thicker than usual. You could add a little more sherry. You don't always know how much liquid you're going to get out of your tomatoes. Okay, so that goes. And then you have a choice of garnishes. Like I had said before, a few croutons thrown in there. And some creme fraiche or sour cream. What else did I say? You could put extra chili flakes, although it's probably better if you let people put on extra chili flakes at this point. And we have a little creme fraiche. Okay. And for maybe a little color, I do have a couple of sprigs of cilantro if they haven't wilted on me in the meantime. Whoop, they're a little bit soft, but you can just imagine if they're a little bit spiffier than right now. Okay, so there you go. That's one presentation for this soup. I hope it doesn't fall out of the bowl onto the camera. Okay, so next I'll clean up this a little bit and rinse out my blender. Excuse me for a minute. I probably couldn't even find a blender replacement for this. But if anybody knows where you can get it. Well, if you're wearing blenders, maybe I should contact where if they still exist and find out if I can get a second blender, a glass blender. So now we're going to go on to a fruit soup. And I like fruit soups, but I don't particularly like them as a main course. I like them for dessert. They're sweeter, obviously, because they have sugar in them, and the berries, of course, have some of their own natural sweetness. And but so I'm just one of those people that does not particularly like my sweet and savory mixed together, and it just would seem like the wrong thing to eat for me as a main course. But for you, it's okay. And I think I said in the recipe, when it all comes down to it, it's almost like having a smoothie. But we want to doll it up a little bit. So if you are doing this with wine, which is what I prefer as my liquid, you can use a white wine. You can use a rosé wine. It's the season in France right now. Everybody's going to be drinking rosé, which is where I learned that was the time to drink it. Summer. I don't think they're as hot as we are, but anyway, they have summertime coming. So choose your fruits as you like, or your berries. I call it a berry because this is mostly berries, but if you wanted to throw in some peaches, you could do that, or some nectarines. So I just take my 2 cups for 4 people to serve 4 portions. I use 2 cups of various berries, and I have strawberries here, I have blackberries, I have raspberries, blueberries, and it's like a heaping 2 cups. Okay? And then I have about 2/3 cup of powdered sugar because it dissolves easily. And then you choose, like I say, choose your liquid, your wine. If you really do not want to have any alcohol, I guess you could use like a flavored water would be nice if there's like a peach flavored water. There happens to be something at Trader Joe's, a Bellini that you could use. A Bellini use sparkling wine. They have it in different flavors. Or you could throw a peach in here. The peaches and things are just not quite their best yet. But anyway, so that goes in. I'll go ahead and put a little bit of this in and add as we go. So you can see that it's like a smoothie. I mean, I don't know what else I don't drink smoothies myself particularly, but I think people put yogurt right in, or ice cream would be good, I'm sure. Probably not as healthy. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add the rest of this. And with this, you should taste it for sweetness, to see if it's sweet enough for you. That's good. It has the seeds in it. So that means I got all the fiber in it, which is good. If you can't stand the seeds, you would want to strain them out, but then you wouldn't have as much quantity. So you might want to think about that, which, just see how much you're going to strain out and all that. So basically, that's it. I don't know anything else you really need to do to it, except if you want to add a little sweet spice like cinnamon or nutmeg, or what I really, really like is cardamom. And if you ask people when they taste this, what is the spice that you're tasting? Very hard for people to detect it. But I think it's a really nice little different flavor. It's considered a sweet spice. I know a lot of Swedish baking is done with it in their rolls and types of sweet pastries. One more taste. Well, let's see. Okay, it gives it a little something that you just don't know what it is. So, again, for a presentation, use something pretty or decorative, a little bowl or what have you, and this just happens to be a stemmed, like a sherbet glass. And again, you need your creme fraiche or sour cream, whichever you prefer, yogurt, whichever floats your boat, as they say. And just put some right in the middle to eat along with it. And if you really want to gild your little lily, you could put a little sprig of mint. I'm lucky there's mint. I'm lucky there's mint still alive outside in the pot, because most of it is dead, and I can understand. So that's really the 4 versions of cold soup. Let me just bring them out here so you can maybe see them a little better. I'll tip them up for you in a second. Yeah. Let me see if I have any other notes. Okay, so the 2 versions of the gazpacho are here. You can move this out of the way, maybe give you a little bit better light. And too far over. Okay, can't see it. Okay, I'm going to do it this way. Hopefully you can see all these, and we'll tip them up to give you a little bit better view here. Okay. All right. Is there anybody who's been asking any questions at all? So this is your gazpacho with tower, gazpacho plain, just in a bowl, the the white bean and corn, bell pepper, gazpacho, and the fruit soup. See if you can see that, girl.
Donna, these look fabulous. I can't tell you. We've had so many people asking about the recipes. I did put up there that we will be emailing it out after this presentation to anyone who is registered. And if they are not registered, they can certainly give us a call in the office at 520-324-1960, and we will add them to our list to send them the recipes. I know that the Southwestern Gazpacho was a mainstay at Cafe Terracotta for 22 years, and people really miss that. So it's sort of fun that really these recipes are so easy that they can do all of this at home and stay cool, and they're healthy.
Yeah, and the only thing you need the stove for is to peel the tomatoes, and as you get into the season, the tomatoes may not even have to be peeled, so they're tender.
Would it ever make sense to use a canned tomato if somebody needed to, if they didn't have fresh tomato available?
Oh, sure. I particularly, if I use canned tomatoes, there are two brands that I like, the Cinto, which is the Italian one, or Contandina. Those two brands are really quite good and can be used in the puree.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I use those too when I'm making sauce. So yeah, I'm very familiar with those. Yeah. And I think, to think outside the box for a fruit soup, how quick was that? So yes, a great little smoothie. Can you tell us the difference maybe between what is creme fraiche as compared to sour cream, if somebody was looking for that, and what's the difference?
The French call it a French cultured cream. They just culture it a little bit longer. It's got to be very similar to yogurt. I think the only thing is they probably use cream instead of maybe milk, and so it gives it a little bit richer, thicker type of flavor. It used to be that you couldn't buy it here in the U.S. when I first started teaching cooking way back, and I used to make it, and I would make it with, and of course Julia is the person that everybody in my age category went by, and she used to have you make your creme fraiche with buttermilk and cream and buttermilk, and you would let it sit at room temperature. Of course, this temperature, I don't know how long it would take, but you'd let it sit for a few days, and then it would thicken and what have you, and you'd have creme fraiche. But I didn't really like the buttermilk part of it that much, so I used yogurt, cream and yogurt. Mm-hmm.
Now, if anybody is interested, you do some cooking classes. I did put your website up there. It's DonnaNordinCooks.com. You sort of run through seasonally, so people need to just sort of keep checking. And you have a Facebook page as well.
If you're interested, you just need to tell me email me to tell me that you'd like to receive schedules and information, and I'll put you on the email list. But I usually do fall, winter. Last year was kind of a disaster, as everybody knows, but then I usually do a spring, and then I usually take summer off because I teach classes up into Lake Tahoe for the last 40 years, a week at Lake Tahoe. And then I also take culinary groups to France, and we zero in on eating and drinking.
Excellent. Good. So if anyone's interested, please let Donna know. You can certainly email her through her website to be added to her list. And Donna, thank you so much for being here today and sharing these refreshing soups. It was really a fun thing to do. And I hope we gave everyone at home some new ideas. So
I hope so. Short timing, and it goes with your theme, whip it up.
That's right. Thank you.